Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. Last week I had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. to catch up with regulators and legislators. And I had the chance to talk with Caitlin Glover, head of the Public Lands Council, about a new rule from the Bureau of Land Management. This new rule will really upend the way public lands are leased, and I asked Caitlin to give us the backstory.
Over the last year, the Bureau of Land Management, which manages hundreds of millions of acres across the West, has been going through this process that they've initially called the Conservation and Landscape Health Rule. They're now couching this as the Public Lands Rule because it is so expansive. And what we saw over the last 2 weeks is that the agency has now finalized that rule. This rule is unlike, I think, any other rule really that we've seen the agency pursue in the past. Normally, when you're talking about public lands uses, these vast open spaces, you know what the use of that land is going to be. It's going to be grazing or recreation or oil and gas development or hunting or fishing or whatever it might be. And because those uses have been established by Congress, it's predictable because Congress told the agency to manage the lands for these kinds of uses. The BLM has done that to varying degrees of success over the last several decades. But what we've seen over the last year is sort of a reimagining of their responsibilities. This public lands rule that we have seen the final text, it doesn't have the force of law quite yet, but we expect it to be finalized here soon. This final text essentially allows the BLM not only to manage for all of these other uses, but for conservation as a use itself. Now, conservation is an ethos, right? We manage for conservation outcomes. For grazing, that means that if you don't manage the land appropriately, then you're not going to be able to use it in the same way or to the same effect in the future. So conservation is an ethos. But what this final rule does is make it a use, attempt to monetize that use in a way that would really change the way that they manage all of those surface acres by establishing conservation leases, restoration leases, and mitigation leases.
So my understanding is they expect parties, groups to spend money to rent these parcels, lease these parcels, and then they're going to pursue conservation on it. Caitlin, conservation by whose standards, whose definition? How is this going to work?
I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, right? So the crux of the challenge here is that the two lease types, conservation leases and that could either be for restoration or for mitigation, really are sort of abstract, right? The agency has said, we'll accept applications for conservation activities, that you could put together a lease application, I could put together a lease application and say that I want to do X, Y, and Z on this particular parcel. It will go through some kind of yet to be determined evaluative process, and then the agency will give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Landscapes are intentionally managed and need to be intentionally managed because there is the potential for butterfly effect across a lot of different acres. You know, we've told the agency this for years through wildfire risk and invasive species. Allowing some of these part and parcel sort of random application of conservation, or you hope conservation practices, but of these applications over the hundreds of millions of acres has the potential not only to be really damaging, but to make the agency's mission impossible to execute. It is going to create conflict, not only because the process that they've set up hasn't really been fleshed all the way out, but also because every other use has specific congressional direction. This would be the only use that Congress didn't direct. And so figuring out how to balance those across the landscape would be nigh impossible. It creates risk for grazing permittees, it creates risk for all other users of public lands, and frankly for the agency themselves.
Thanks to Caitlin for filling us in, and to be sure, environmental groups have cheered this new public lands rule from the BLM, but it looks like it will be bogged down in court cases, probably by the time we get to summer. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. It's time to dive into these markets, and joining us this week is Darren Newsom, Senior Market Analyst at Barchart. And Darren, for the past 6 months, it seems like news out of South America has been bearish, the U.S. grain markets, but that might be changing. Fill us in on what's going on down in South America.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is a time of year when we usually focus on U.S. weather, and it's certainly been a lot to talk about with these storms rolling through the plains and Midwest. But all of a sudden, we have to turn our attention back down south because now we're seeing and hearing reports of some major flooding going on over some key areas of Brazil. So while I, originally thought, maybe this was being overplayed a bit, seeing the videos and hearing the reports, it now looks like this could be one of the commercial factors helping to push the corn market higher. We've actually seen some commercial buying here basically this week since this all seems to have developed. And to a certain degree, soybeans as well. We still aren't seeing a great deal of demand coming into either market, at least new demand coming in. But we do see that commercial buying. We're seeing the spreads react. We're seeing basis react. All this is telling us that the commercial side seems to be taking this a bit more seriously.
Now, you mentioned where we might not be seeing too much new buying. Darren, managed money crowd not yet starting to put new longs in place in the corn market?
They're not putting new longs in place, but what'll be interesting to see is how much of the short position they continue to cover. It was actually interesting that towards the end, the last week of April, we actually saw what looked to be increased net short positions in both corn and soybeans, particularly in the corn market. So, now we'll look ahead to Friday's CFTC reports. But at this point in the week, since Tuesday, we've seen the market start to move. Certainly looks like funds are doing some short covering again.
All right, Darren, taking a look over at the soybean market, one of your recent commentaries noted that the basis for soybeans is tightening across the country. This time of year, what does that tell you?
What it tells me is, we know we've got plenty of supplies, but it tells me that we are seeing an increase in demand. Now, maybe we're finally getting that late round of demand from the world's largest buyer. It just simply hasn't materialized this year. But if there's problems in South America, weather, strikes, whatever it might be, it's possible that China's finally coming to the U.S. and at least looking for some secondary supplies.
All right, so keep an eye on those export reports coming out. Darren, before we let you go, we've got to turn our focus over to the wheat market. We've seen all contracts really get excited here in the past few weeks. Chicago moved north of $6. It stayed there. Is that the new level of support for Chicago wheat?
To me, wheat, Chicago wheat could be anywhere between $4 and $8. So $6 is a nice mid-range. Fundamentally, this market is about as bearish as anything I've seen in the last number of years. That hasn't stopped it from going up, though, and it usually doesn't stop it, but it is creating maybe one of the most dramatic rubber band dispositions that we've seen in quite some time.
So how should we be getting prepared for that, Darren?
Volatility has gone up, so it's hard to slide some puts in underneath this thing. But obviously, if we can, we're going to want to get some new crop sales. Not a lot, but a few new crop sales in place, particularly with rains falling across the Midwest, seemingly increasing the possibility of a better crop, a soft red winter crop.
Lots to watch here as this growing season heats up. Our thanks to Darren Newsom, Senior Market Analyst at Barchart. Darren, we always appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me on again, Mike. I always enjoy it.
All right, folks, we'll be back with more This Week in Agribusiness after this. One company that's been making investments in North America is AGCO, particularly through their Fendt brand. Recently, I had the chance to travel to Jackson, Minnesota, to the newly opened Fendt Lodge for a conversation with Chairman and CEO Eric Hansotia. I asked him, why did they build this in Jackson?
Well, this is our brand home for North America, and essentially it's got two purposes. Number one, we want to be able to tell the Fendt story in all of its detail to the marketplace. But maybe more importantly, we want to invite farmers in so we can learn from them about how we can serve them better.
That makes a lot of sense. And as I think about telling that Fendt story, when you're telling it, what sets Fendt apart from the other brands in the ag space?
Well, Fendt is just the best of the best. It's got the most premium product, best technology, best quality, highest performance. But then it's also coupled with the best service and support from our dealer network. We've been very, very careful on designing the best products, but also very careful on our distribution, only turning one store on at a time once they've met the very high bar of being a Fendt dealer.
Well, so that leads me to my next question. Once you have those dealers online, as you look out to the future, Eric, what is next for Fendt?
Well, Fendt's growing fast, and we expect that to continue. You know, from 2021 to 2023, we almost doubled the business. We're 2 years ahead of our growth plan. It's because the customers just love the product. And so our strategy of going step by step and doing a few things very well is paying off. And the customers love the overall Fendt experience. So we expect this growth to strongly continue going forward.
All right. If I can, I'd like to look at AGCO in a different way. We've seen a number of headlines recently about PTx. Eric, tell me, what is PTx? What are you bringing to the market?
Well, we just closed our record year last year, and so things are rolling nicely. We're growing strongly. One of the backbones of that growth is our focus on precision agriculture. We've raised our engineering budget by 60% since I've been able to lead the company. We've invested in technology, and then the big move was the joint venture with Trimble. It is the largest ag tech deal in the history of the industry, and now that combined with precision planting is our overall technology group that we call PTx. Precision agriculture with technology, and the multiplication impact that can have for farmers on helping them be more productive and more sustainable.
One of the things I understand that PTx is bringing to the table is sort of an agnosticism about brands. It's not just going to be working on one specific color, is that right?
Exactly. It's a very unique strategy where we are going to serve all farmers. AGCO's strategy is the most farmer-focused company in industry. Serve all farmers. So we'll serve farmers who want to buy a brand new piece of equipment from us, but we'll also serve farmers who want to buy brand new equipment from someone else, our OEM relationships, or if they want to upgrade their existing machines through a retrofit solution. We'll make their 5-year-old brand X or their 7-year-old brand Y machine more capable through addition of a technology module.
You mentioned farmer focus. I've heard that phrase a lot as I talk to folks from AGCO. What does that mean in this context, Eric?
Well, many of the companies are actually product focused. So they'll come onto the farm and they'll say, tell me about your tractor. What do you like about your tractor? How does it... And then they'll go off the farm. What we want our people to go is, farmer, tell me about your crops. Tell me about your economics. What are your pain points? And then we go back and we say, what can we do with our product, with our dealer, with our data, with our service? The overall package to serve those farmers' needs. It's more of a farmer focus than a product focus. That's informed how we think about technology, the retrofit, and how we informed on our farmer core distribution strategy, where we take the solution to the farm instead of having the farmer come to the dealership.
Thanks to Eric Hansotia for taking the time to update us on what's happening in Jackson, Minnesota, and we'll have more coming from our friends at Fendt over the summer.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, during this crucial time of year, Greg Solier keeps his eye on the sky. And Greg, it looks like it's going to be a bit of a cool down in the Pacific Northwest this week.
Yeah, had some of that last week with one of these El Nino-driven weather systems, and we keep finding them here, and we think El Nino beginning to wind down a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. But in any event, yeah, some frost and freeze east of the Cascades and parts of the Snake River Valley last week, and there's another shot of cold, and there's some snow into the lowest elevations as well. Had that across the Dakotas last week mixed with the rain. But again, look at as further drought improvement for the spring rains extending northward into the Canadian prairies. So one low out towards the Black Hills, thunder, and boy, you got bombed into areas of Nebraska with 4-inch hail balls and spots last week. Probably going to do it again this week, and points to the east and south, and another weather system on the move out of southern Idaho. Cooler, drier air into northern California, the Pacific Northwest. But looky here, nice ridge. We've been looking for this thing here for the past month. We think it's going to be a little more transitory, and finally in the next couple of 2 or 3 weeks make the move into the plains. So even the rain on the plains in the western Corn Belt's been getting a little bit out of control. And the last and southern extension of one of those El Nino driven systems out across the desert southwest, some higher elevation snow, and look at the gamut of weather from soaking rains and drought easing rains for the Nebraska region, the Panhandle on south and east, more severe weather, more large hail, more damaging wind. Had that all the way down into West Texas cotton last week. It'll make a move towards Oklahoma City again, and the Metroplex into the middle part of the week. Later in the week, there's the extension of that ridge building its way across the northern reaches of the country, back into the western states, to the valleys of California. One more little piece of energy making its way out of the southern plains, and look at it as additional drought relief for those winter wheat fields into Oklahoma and Texas.
Central part of the U.S., Greg, it has been active with weather over the past 2 weeks. Does that cool off at all or tone down?
It's trying to. The longer range a little muddled. That's why we think that El Nino is maybe doing a demise quicker and faster. It may have more positive effects down the line with maybe some much needed warmth and even some heat later into the spring and summertime season. But another wide and expansive area of showers and thunderstorms northern and eastern Corn Belt back into the Ozarks, and has been pointed out one of the wetter springs and through Missouri for the past probably 10 years down there, and probably in the backside of this weather system, some snow across the Dakotas, the upper Midwest. We do get a push of drier weather, but not till week's end in the northern and western Corn Belt locales, and still unsettled off to the east. So probably not much opportunity for further advance out there with spring field work, but the numbers as a whole still pretty much on target to those 5-year averages. Boy, it's just been an absolutely horrid severe weather season from Nebraska to the Metroplex on to the east. We're going to do it all over again, but again, drought relief, but again, hail, tornado activity, damaging winds early to middle parts of the week, and not much movement out of this weather system. It still continues to plague the deep south and southeastern part of the country and back into the Delta with more severe weather with wind and cooler, drier air into West Texas later in the week.
Any chance growers in the eastern part of the U.S. could see a bit of dry time in the coming week?
Very short-lived and predominantly very early in the week, if that, and probably Ohio Valley on southward. This low will be slow to move, and a broad southwest and northeast jet stream pattern. So wide and expansive the showers and thunderstorms with additional drought relief for the upper Midwest back across the Dakotas as mentioned, but maybe some potting in those fields again for some eastern and southern sections of the Corn Belt. So not expecting much progress here for this week. Following week, probably so severe weather will make its way late in the week across areas of the Northeast and New England. Across the southeastern portions of the country, a little prod of some heat and humidity as you would expect. Crops are moving along quite nicely, but the severe weather is playing out through Texas and through Bayou Country, the lower Ohio Valley as we move on through the early and middle parts of the week. High pressure and a pretty quiet weather picture across much of the mid-Atlantic region down through Florida. Late in the week, it's a slow-moving boundary. The trough is still here across the central Gulf Coast areas. Showers and thunderstorms will be fairly widespread across much of the Carolinas in through Florida as well. We'll check that 4-week forecast coming up in the second half hour.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Sustainability is a hot topic in agriculture. Farmers around the country are hearing pleas from Uncle Sam to become more sustainable. They're being urged by companies in the ag ecosystem to adopt sustainability, and not surprisingly, agri-marketers are taking a look at sustainability as well. Our own Lainey Beatsma recently had the chance to attend the National Agri-Marketers Association meeting in Kansas City, where she listened in on a panel of these experts discussing sustainability.
In Kansas City this week for the Farm Voice panel experience sponsored by AdFarm. AdFarm is a full-service marketing agency who is devoted solely to the agriculture industry. The focus of the Farm Voice panel is decoding on-farm sustainability, and we had the opportunity to connect with those expert panelists.
So many of the producers that join our Farm Voice panel really have an interest in letting their voice be heard. They are often advocates on behalf of the industry, they're involved in different producer groups and associations, and they see value in having influence in the way that agricultural marketing is done. Sometimes it comes from a place of frustration. They've seen it done poorly, they've seen inaccuracies in marketing and agricultural marketing, and they want to make sure that they have a voice and a place in making sure that gets represented the way that they see themselves and they see the industry.
At the Alliance, we believe it's critical for farmers and ranchers and practicing veterinarians and others who have their boots on the ground every day to be empowered to tell their stories and share their perspectives on hot topics with the media, on social media, in their communities, and wherever conversations about the future of animal agriculture are happening.
I think farmers have been sustainable for a long time. You know, we have some farming operations that have been in the same family, you know, for 100 some odd years now. And what we've really realized is that, you know, you're doing the right thing, you're doing the sustainable thing. It's getting that recognition for it through the supply chain. So there's different programs that'll, you know, reward you for doing soil health practices or nitrogen management or carbon. Building soil health takes years, it takes time. And that's, our brains aren't really wired for that. We want things now and we want big changes, right? And that's a piece we really have to kind of wrestle with, is that patience factor. of making sure that we're giving these projects enough time to really get started, stay committed to them, and have a set of measurable deliverables that you can report back on 5 years from now.
One thing that we're really proud of at Merck Animal Health is all of the innovation and solutions that we have really invested in to support livestock producers. And that can mean vaccines, it could mean parasiticide treatments, it can mean interventions for animal health that deliver better health and welfare outcomes. And that's really from a health perspective. But above and beyond that, I think as we all see in our own lives and our own environment the rise of kind of wearable devices and the things that technology can deliver. We've also really invested in individual animal identification with our Allflex brands or in animal monitoring with Sense Hubs so that you can get that novel animal level data and really understand how to measure progress in a new way or with novel insights that can enable better decisions. So we're really proud of all of these solutions that we're trying to bring forward to farmers, ranchers, veterinarians to drive positive outcomes in animal health and welfare, which is ultimately driving more sustainable ecosystem.
Yes, it certainly sounds like sustainability and phrases related to it will continue to be awfully present in marketing for agriculture. The event was also a time to celebrate those in the industry. Lainey had a chance to catch up with the Agri-Marketer of the Year, Todd Frazier from Corteva. She asked him how he got started.
Well, I think I go back to the roots growing up in rural Nebraska, and just solid work ethic, great people that you work together and help farmers produce more crops. So I bank on that every single day when we work through decisions and how we create new products for farmers. So I always rely on that upbringing.
What's fun about your job? You know, we think about agri-marketers and we think of, oh, they get to see all these creative things all the time, and that is a fun part, but what do you enjoy?
Oh, so many rewarding things, but I think working with all the people, our farmers first, being on their farm, seeing how they adapt and innovate is so rewarding, and then bringing all of our teams together to serve their needs is so rewarding and so fun.
Well, congratulations to Todd Frazier for winning Agribusiness Marketer of the Year. Lainey also had the chance to catch up with Brian Torrey, who was dubbed Marketer of the Year, and she asked him about the work it takes year in and year out to make an impression.
At Deere, we're held to a higher standard. Our customers love our products, our customers believe in our products, and our customers are very loyal to our brand. And so because of that, they hold us to a very high standard. And so we really work to deliver on that standard, and we really work with agency partners and media partners as well to deliver on that standard so that we can actually meet their expectations and deliver value for them on their farm.
People do hold John Deere to a higher standard and really look to you as a leader in the industry, of course. How do you stay connected with those end consumers, your farmers and ranchers who are using your products all day long?
A lot of travel. A lot of time at shows, a lot of focus groups as well, and just a lot of friends and family in the industry, and then social media as well. I think I probably am friends with about 400 farmers on Twitter, so just staying connected to them in real time on social media helps quite a bit.
Congratulations to all the winners there at the NAMA conference in Kansas City, and thanks to Lainey Beetsma for keeping us updated on the ground. Stick with us though, folks. We're going to keep talking about sustainability later on in the program. Recently, I had the opportunity to visit with folks from United Soybean Board. Specifically, I talked with a New Jersey farmer who's excited about some of the initiatives and the programs that the USB has put into place. We'll have that conversation coming up.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. We're going to turn our focus now to agronomy, specifically agronomy for your acres with the experts from Nutrient Ag Solutions. This week, we're going to Texas to talk about rice farming with crop consultant Kyle Huvar. Kyle, thanks for joining us this week, and tell us, what is the state of rice production down there in South Texas right now?
Hey, Mike, how's it going? Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here. Everything's going good so far for this rice growing season. We are wrapped up on planting, and now we're going into flood season. So rice fields that have got stands and are sizable are getting water flooded.
And it looks like you're standing in one of those flooded fields with us today. Is that right?
Yes, sir. This grower planted early March, around March 12th. So it's about time we're going to a flood. We got fertilizer out and herbicide down.
All right, production is moving. Kyle, let's look out longer term. Crop rotation. How important is it down there in your region of South Texas?
My opinion is crop rotation is very important. A lot of the high yielding growers in our area rotate between a rice to a idle fallow ground, which usually has cattle on it. So it'll be 1 year of rice production followed by idle or cattle ground year, and then rice again, which gives the ground time to heal and also allows those cows to eat on those weedy rice problems and grass species that trouble us during the growing season.
Well, that certainly makes sense. Kyle, I'd like to get your opinion of another important topic in this day and age, and that's sustainability. What type of sustainable practices do you see in the rice industry in your area?
Sustainable efforts are a big thing in our area. Because of water shortages, just due to drought years and stuff, rice farmers in our area have done a lot of work through laser leveling land to change the topography to allow for a more uniform flood, which mitigates soil and water loss. That's been our main one.
It's incredible to see what technology can do. Kyle, to that end, I'm curious about weeds. What weed pressures do you see in South Texas, and how are you recommending growers grapple with them in the field?
Yes, sir. So our number one weed problem or grass that I battle is barnyard grass. We have facet and propanil resistant barnyard grass. Really, the best way to deal with these troublesome resistant weeds is to start clean and stay clean. So I tell all my growers, when the rice is planted behind the drill, we go with the pre-emerge herbicide to try and start clean and stay clean. It's a lot harder to come back over the top and more expensive to control those weeds later when you can hit it off up front. My favorite product to run pre-emerge on rice is Command 3ME by FMC with our soil adjuvant Infuse incorporated. Infuse helps bind the Command to the soil and allows for the water time for the water that we need to activate.
Lots to think about here for this growing season, particularly for those rice growers. Kyle Huvar, crop consultant with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Thanks for joining us this week for the update on agronomy for your acres.
Thank you so much.
Greg Solier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg Solier outlined what's to come weather-wise for the bulk of the country, and it looked like an active forecast. Greg, who's going to see what precipitation next week?
Or it's probably better to answer who's not going to see anything, really. Perhaps the eastern seaboard, maybe the far desert southwest, but Northern California, the Sierra Range into the Cascades and Bitterroots in particular. Some organized snowfall, lower elevation rain and wet snow for Big Sky across the Dakotas. And we're going to probably get to the end of the growing season, and by early, maybe midsummer, and say, what drought, because it's basically going to, I think, completely evaporate out of the western Corn Belt, most of the plains, but coming at a price here in the short term, more severe weather into the southern Great Lakes region, down Florida way, some moisture as well. So it remains a busy weather pattern. Mike, again, we've been talking about a winding down process that happens with an El Nino setup. Takes a while. We will get there with planting and field work.
All right, Greg, looking at the week of May 20th, what do you expect temperatures to look like?
So we've got cooler on the move. The trough is moving. We talked about earlier in the broadcast that ridge that was over the western and northwestern part of the country beginning to make its progress into the middle part of the country. Not before one more weather system may impact your Memorial Day holiday weekend. Warmth from the Ohio Valley southeast, cool air from the Missouri back westward, and you know when you get that U-shaped configuration, here is the problem. But again, drought relief, look at it that way, but probably some additional field work delays into the Great Lakes region, back to the Central Plains. Again, winding down of the drought, more seasonal moisture, but severe from southern sections of the plains, the Ohio Valley. Normal precip for the east, drying out across the Gulf Coast, southwestern part of the country, and some late season moisture, Mike, for Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. That is not a bad thing either.
All right, Greg, does that cold expand in the week following Memorial Day?
It quickly begins to lift out. We finally see again some building of the ridge over the western part of the country, a little downstream trough, but it is moving. The cool air moving its way back into the Canadian prairie, and temperatures about normal. Same with a recovery on soil temperatures as well across the Midwest. We think the last of organized moisture out of the Ohio Valley. Maybe New England gets a dash of snow. Severe weather in this part of the country, but wide and expansive. A shift to much drier weather needed, and we'll get it northern and central through western Corn Belt locales as we open up the new month of June.
As we get into June, Greg, does it feel like summer?
It feels like summertime with this setup here west of the Missouri. Here's that summer heat building. I think this will begin to make its way to the north and east. The jet stream pattern in northwest to southeast. Cool air for the southeastern parts of the Canadian prairie. Normal temperatures otherwise over the eastern part of the country. And it's a little bit delayed, but here we go with opportunities for the last of planting and field work as we see it for the season. Almost on target date-wise for much of the northern and central Corn Belt back into the plains. Wet weather over the southeastern part of the country, down through Texas ways, southwestern sections of the country too, and a little moisture too for the Pacific Northwest.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is brought to you by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of highly effective and efficient high-speed discs and land rollers. Visit brandt.ca for more. Well, folks, during the Farm Progress Roundup over the past several months, we've met several of our writers and editorial staff and talked about their connection to agriculture. But in the Farm Progress family, that connection really is throughout the whole company. Joining us this week is Regional Sales Manager Lainey Beetsma. Lainey, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Well, and I wanted to talk to you, Lainey, because you do farm. You and your family are the owners of a farm in Missouri. Can you fill us in on how things are looking this spring down in your neck of the woods?
Well, we started out very dry in the month of April, but it turned over around April 16th. We ended with nearly 7.5 inches of rain in the month of April, and it really came in the second half. And so planting was really slow to start because we were so dry, and then everyone turned it on, and then we turned really wet. This is the wettest April we've had in our area since 2005. So that we're going to see with a lot of those corn acres that were planted and some soybeans, but we got finished with corn. There's going to be some replant, especially in those low-lying areas.
That certainly makes sense. This rainfall has been something else here recently across the Corn Belt. And Lainey, while we were talking, you recently had a chance to attend the National Agri-Marketing Association's annual meeting. And I was wondering if you could fill us in. What happened there in Kansas City at the event?
Yes, NAMA, or National Agri-Marketing Association, is about 1,600 members strong across the U.S. And it's a great event that's held yearly. And this year was in Kansas City, but it's not always there. And people come and join and connect with new ideas. Of course, lots of collaboration in making those relationships. Some big awards are given, like the Agri-Marketer of the Year, as well as the Agribusiness Leader of the Year. And so those are kind of the coveted awards that are at the event. Lots of networking opportunities and some wonderful speakers that bring in the agriculture industry and also some from not in the agriculture industry. So we have people working maybe in fashion to give a brand new fresh take that we don't see a lot in agriculture, or with some movie stars or pop stars. And so just really a different, unique impression and perspective when it comes to marketing.
Absolutely. It's great to think outside the box every now and again. And Lainey, before we let you go, it's hard to believe summer is almost here. It'll be Farm Progress Show before you know it. Are you getting excited to get up to Boone?
I am really excited to be up to Boone at the end of August. Nearly 600 exhibitors, the largest outdoor show in the United States. 2 weeks later, we follow up with Husker Harvest Days in Grand Island, Nebraska. So from my side of things in sales, being a regional sales manager, really been working hard to connect all of those businesses with their spaces for the Farm Progress Show.
It'll be here before we know it. Lainey Beetsma, Regional Sales Manager with Farm Progress. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks, Mike.
And folks, stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we come back.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. The semi-tractor and truck combination that brought top honors at the Louisville Truck Show several weeks ago was pretty stunning in its own right. But then you looked at the load behind it, and that was impressive too. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, I would imagine some of you made it to that Louisville Truck Show several weeks ago. That's the smaller cousin of the National Farm Machinery Show. It's held a few weeks later. And they have that big rig build-off every year. Take a look at the truck that won this year. They're still talking about this one. The 2024 Peterbilt, crafted by the Davis brothers at Owensville, Indiana. They didn't miss a detail in their shop on this one. Everything was amazing, even that tricked-out sleeper cab. The Davis brothers are farmers, and their trucks haul a lot of farm equipment, and they called upon fellow farmers Denny Simpson and Alan Cruz to deck out their trailer. Denny loaned him his International 1486, made in 1973. Alan said the Davis boys could borrow his 1972 John Deere 4020, quite a load, and powered by that award-winning Peterbilt and its trailer, put together there outside of Owensville, Indiana, northwest of Evansville. Mark Stock is interested in equipment from all over the country. He shares with us his weekly report now from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. With a lot of the planters running across the country, a lot of people don't think about attending auctions. But on May the 8th, over 1,500 items will sell on Big Iron. On May the 15th, over 1,750 items will sell to the highest bidder. Barbara Jackson from Bloomfield, Nebraska will sell a 2019 Case IH RB 565 Premium Round Baler, a MacDon Windrower, and an M&W 12-wheel hay rake. Diamond Trail Land and Livestock will sell a 2015 John Deere 6150R mechanical front tractor with a loader and a grapple fork, a New Holland Versatile 9030 bi-directional tractor, a 1982 John Deere 4440 Power Shift, and a John Deere 4995 self-propelled windrower. RDO Equipment Company, with locations across North Dakota, Oregon, South Dakota, and Minnesota, will sell a 2022 John Deere 560R round baler, several combines, a John Deere 9770, John Deere 9870, John Deere 9550, and a Case IH 8010 combine. Yes, Big Iron sells construction equipment, including a 2017 year model Caterpillar 623 self-propelled elevating scraper by Burns, Wyoming. And please look forward to our May 16th auction for Van Wall Equipment, John Deere dealer with locations across Iowa, selling late model equipment. Find it all on BigIron.com and SullivanAuctioneers.com.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And we're excited, as always, to meet that next generation of agricultural leader. This week, we're talking with Amara Jackson. She's serving as president of the National Officer Team for the FFA this year. And Amara, thanks for making the time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start at the beginning. Amara, tell us about where you grew up. Did you come up in an agricultural family?
So I'm from a small, I'm from a small town in Michigan called Corunna. So as a Michigander, we do the classic handhold, and it's right about here on the map. Rural community, I first got introduced to agriculture by growing up raising and showing horses with my family. And then my extended family are also cash crop farmers. So very familiar with the agriculture industry. And then my love for agriculture just continued to develop during my time in FFA.
What were some of the highlights of your time serving in high school in FFA?
Oh my gosh, I loved my involvement with the Corunna FFA chapter. One of those highlights was when I got to attend my first state FFA convention in 2019. During that time, I wasn't competing anything. I wasn't doing anything extravagant. It's a highlight because I realized in that moment man, I'm a part of something way bigger than myself. And I saw all the opportunities to get involved after that time at that convention. Another highlight was when I attended the Washington Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. That was my first big overnight trip by myself, and you go to that conference not knowing anybody else. And so I just had great exposure to friendship and made some great memories and learned some incredible lessons that week.
That's fantastic. Now you get to lead this organization that's bigger than yourself. Amara, tell us, what are your responsibilities as president? What's the day-to-day job look like?
So as president, we share a lot of similar responsibilities as the 4 vice presidents and the secretary that also serve alongside me. But one role that I do have is I lead or chair the National FFA Board of Directors, and then I also sit on the National FFA Board of Trustees. So serving in those capacities has been really enlightening on my end, having the opportunity to see the behind the scenes of how the National FFA organization runs. As a student in high school, those were functions that I never even thought about. And so now having the opportunity to lead and serve as a voice on those boards is really exciting to me.
That is fantastic. Amara, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this week. We wish you the best of luck in your future career and your reigning year of service as FFA president. Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit Copperhead Ag for more information. This week, Chad Colby was able to take a step back from the ground level view and really look at the tech industry from on high, and he likes a trend he's seeing.
You know, I love seeing trends in technology that that are here to stay. They're not going to go away. And I think all of us, if you've been in a combine or a planter tractor, you see all these monitors and think, what in the world? Why do I need all that? What can we do to fix that? This late model Steiger right here has got 2 OEM displays, plus a 2020, plus an iPad. He's got a lot going on. The reality is I think there's some trends coming to fix that. Precision Planting rolled out a bigger monitor. This is the standard size 2020 that we're all very familiar with as far as that size and shape. They also have a larger unit now. I talked to a Precision Planting dealer who ran one this spring, some already, and said, Chad, is it possible it's almost too big? And the conversation was, maybe I can eliminate something else by having it. And if you're a John Deere fan, you know all about the new G5 series of monitors. Unfortunately, this planter tractor was in a shed for obvious reasons this past week in the Midwest. But the reality is you always have kind of that primary display on the armrest of the tractor. That's really not going to change, right? Yes, the new display is faster and brighter and all those great things. But I get a little more excited about that universal display, the one that's on the corner post here in this tractor. The reality is you put that in any situation, a sprayer, a combine, a 20-year-old tractor, or a 15-year-old combine, and guess what? Pair it up with a modem and you can get all that data back, which is very important. We told you here just a few weeks ago, don't buy a new iPad because there are new ones around the corner. You're going to want to tune into our tech segment next week, and I'll give you all the details. 2 big ones I can share with you now, a massive jump in performance in terms of processing power and a brilliant new screen. More details next week. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. That certainly seems like progress, though I'll be happy when we're back to 0 screens in our daily life. Leave it here for more This Week in Agribusiness when we come back. The United States continues to crush record amounts of soybeans into their constituent meal and oil. A lot of that is being driven by demand from new products, including soybean oil and some specialty initiatives from the United Soybean Board. I caught up with board member Patrick Giberson to talk about the ones he's especially excited about.
The biggest one that we're optimistic about right now is the firefighting foam that we have out. And reason being with that, I mean, you know, our first responders risk their lives every day for us. And if we can give them something that's safer for them to use, to go home to their families and not have to worry about forever chemicals and what, you know, it might cause down the road for them, it's a win-win. It's a win for the environment and it's a win for them.
And that is a huge topic. You mentioned the forever chemicals, PFAS, PFAS, which can infiltrate the environment and you can't get rid of it. this this soybean foam doesn't have any of that in it. Is that right?
That's correct. There's none of that in it. So, it's environmentally friendly and it's, safe for the people that are using it.
And the firefighters, do they like it so far?
Yeah, from what we looked at, there was one done up in New York not too long ago, and the other one was down in Georgia here recently. They showed pictures of it, and it was funny. They were doing a training exercise, and in the video, they set a small fire, controlled fire, and put it out with this foam. Well, a lot of times when they do this, they relight the fire. It wouldn't relight after they used the foam on it, so it works.
Well, that's what we like to see, getting a good product out there, adding a little more value to the American soybean supply. Patrick, what else has you excited in your work here on the United Soybean Board?
On the product end of it, we're doing another deal with DeWalt, and it's a bar and chain oil that you can find in 1,300 Home Depots nationwide. So every farmer that wants to see where his checkoff dollars have went to, everybody's got a chainsaw on the farm. So go to your Home Depot, support yourself.
Thanks, Patrick, for that update, and it's fantastic to see the work being done by the United Soybean Board to create new uses for soy meal and soy oil. If you're curious about how your checkoff dollars are being used, you can learn more at unitedsoybean.org. And folks, thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us here for This Week in Agribusiness. We'll see you next time right here.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.